the music invited me back into the scene in some way, in a different way. So some of it seemed like, oh, I'm kind of remembering what it was, as though now I'm hearing the musical accompaniment. or anyway, I guess the most remarkable thing about it is it felt like there was another layer of information that I got about this and the session.
Welcome to Stories from Under the Piano. I'm Craig Addy, your host. I'm the musician who listens to the listener. This podcast offers a glimpse into the world of Under the Piano, an immersive musical experience I've been providing for 15 years. Over 1,000 people have discovered comfort, connection, and healing through these sessions lying under my grand piano. In each podcast episode, a guest shares a personal story, and I respond with a spontaneous piano piece that evokes the emotions and mood of their story. My mission is to connect, comfort, and inspire through the universal language of music. Thank you for joining me on this journey. Let's dive in. Welcome, everybody, to Stories from Under the Piano. I am delighted to have my friend Alfred DePew as my guest today. And let's find out a little bit about you first. So you have some interesting areas of expertise, Alfred. You're like a migrant cultural worker, a writer, a painter, a process facilitator. I've always thought of you as a Renaissance man, because I know you do even more than that.
Yep.
Yes. And where do you live?
In Vancouver, British Columbia.
Yeah, but you weren't born here, were you?
Hmm?
You weren't born here, were you?
No, I was born in St. Louis, Missouri.
Yeah. And when did you come here?
I came here in 2007 from the state of Maine, where I lived for 26 years.
Yeah. And you're quite educated as well, aren't you?
Yeah.
Tell us a
I made
bit
it
about that.
little touch and go there for a while. I flunked out of ninth grade, but, had a little comeback there and actually went on to a small liberal arts college in southern Wisconsin for a year, and then lived in Europe for a while, and then came back and finished my undergraduate work at what's now Webster University outside St. Louis. And then started graduate work at University of Vermont, and then finished it at University of New Hampshire.
Yes. That's fantastic. There's more than that, isn't there? You do workshops.
Yeah.
Yeah. Tell us about
I taught composition and literature at universities in northern New England for a long time. And then I started to develop, the first one I developed was a journal workshop. And I was teaching at the art school, and I was talking to the continuing studies head. And I said, well, what if we did a journal writers workshop this summer? And she said, oh, I don't know, we've never done anything like that. And so she said, okay, let's try it. And it went. And ever after that, I was doing either an autobiography workshop or I also created something called the Community Writers Workshop, which was cross-genre, a memoir writing class and journal workshop. And then I started a men's journal workshop, which I taught in church basements. And so I would also do workshops around the state of Maine, either in schools for teachers and for students, and then also for community, and also through the Maine Writers and Publishers Alliance.
Yeah. And there's more. You're up to there's some things you're doing currently that you haven't mentioned yet.
Mm-hmm.
Like energy work and...
Yeah. Well, 25 years ago, I certified as a polarity therapist. And when I moved out here, nobody had ever heard of that. So I describe it kind of as really, really, really complicated Reiki. So it's energy work, but there's zillions of moving parts. And And so I kind of let that go. But then around in COVID time, my energy awareness became really acute, both, in my own being, but also collectively. So I started working with those principles and those practices again more in my own sort of morning practice.
Mhm.
And then I started to try table work again when lockdown stopped and we were beginning to meet in person again. And a friend of mine wanted to practice massage, so he would give me a massage, and then the next time we got together, I would give him a polarity session. And I'd get all my notes out and open the book on his belly and like look over and get my crystals and stuff. It was very much sort of a laboratory, like, oh yeah, oh, I remember the fire pathway. Yes, okay. And as I was doing that, my teacher from back east, her work had evolved in a really interesting way that she was calling sacred geometry. That was working with the Platonic forms in crystalline form and in thought form, the dodecahedron and the icosahedron and the star tetrahedron. And so she taught a course in Maine, and I zoomed in. I was the one person who was from away, as we say back east, and it really just shifted my whole way of working. So that I continued to do that as well.
Yeah. And you paint.
Yep. And draw and write. I type on my manual typewriter.
Yeah. And you're going to share a little bit about the Akashic Records, aren't you?
Yeah. Yeah.
We'll save that for your story, maybe.
Okay.
But you mentioned that you were a writer. You've published a number of things, and you've won some awards too, right?
My first book was a collection of fiction, collection of stories, and it won the Flannery O'Connor Award and was published in 1992. And then my second book, I ended up publishing myself, and it was called Wild and Woolly, A Journal Keeper's Handbook, based on the journal workshops that I was teaching. And that was done in collaboration with Tim McCrate and his then assistant, Abby Johnston. And it was just such a fun collaboration. This was 2004, when Amazon was still new and really doing what it was designed to do to help independent writers and publishers distribute their books.
Yes.
Because we really didn't have access to Ingram, which is the largest book distributor in North America. And then the third book is a collection of fiction, which I published in 2014. And then it's 2 novellas and stories. And then I came out with a small novella set in Quebec City after World War II. And that came out, I think, in 2018. And then next month...
That one is called Odalisque. Is that how you say it?
Odalisque.
Yeah. And the other book you mentioned, was that the wedding song for poor people?
Wedding song for poorer people. Yeah.
It's good to give us the titles of the books, Alfred.
Oh, yeah? Yeah. I used to work in bookstores, so I'm really used to people coming up and saying, I'm looking for a book. Oh, you've come to the right place. Okay. The author's name, and I can't remember the title, but can you tell me about what it's about? It's kind of about plants. Was it gardening? Well, no, it's more like, maybe it's botany. Kind of, too, it was kind of, and usually it's something that's, in the press or something, especially if Oprah has just been talking about it. It's like, I was the one Oprah talked about. Yes. Okay. Well, we'll go right to, new nonfiction. Okay. Then. So.
And you've got something coming out this fall, right? And that is?
One is, the title is An Inexact Sense of the Heart, which is a collection of essays, some short, some longer, on, one's about teaching writing, one's called drawing and talent, Another one's called The Dear Love of Comrades. Another title is The Enigma of Healing. So it's about many different topics. Some of the shorter ones are from Vancouver Observer columns
Oh, okay.
from
I think
when
I
I was,
recognize that title.
yeah, that's how we met, Craig. Because
Yes,
I
yes.
a piece, Vancouver Observer. That was the second piece I ever did, Under the Piano.
Oh, I didn't realize it was that young.
Yeah.
Oh,
The first one I did an introductory column, and then I did, oh gosh, what was his name? Hatfield. He was doing men's work, and then I met you, and I said, "Oh, can I write about you?" And he said, "Sure." And so I came for Under the Piano, and I think the first
right.
line of that column was, "Imagine finding yourself under the piano sober."
Yes. Oh, oh, that was fun.
Yeah.
Anything else about yourself that you want people to know?
I don't think so.
Okay.
To be here. It's always fun to, you know, kind of have
Yeah.
conversations.
Well, I'll
In
be honest. The reason why I wanted you as a guest is because you're always fun. I always have so much fun with you. So no pressure. So we're gonna move into the next part of this podcast is where you're gonna share a story. And
Mhm.
what story would you like to share?
Well, you mentioned the Akashic Records, and I've been training over the last year to read and interpret the Akashic Records, which I guess the best way to describe the Akashic Records is sort of like if you were to imagine a library in which all the information about everybody's soul, basically, and timeline and history are kept, like a big reference desk, and you could go and tap into yours or with permission for someone else's. Um, uh, so you can also open the Akashic Records of an event or a piece of land, um, and many other things. So I, I want to tell the story of the first time I went into the Akashic Records with the help of a friend of mine in
Mm,
Alberta.
lovely.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's hear it.
Once upon a time, it was a little like that. So my friend wanted some practice in opening the records, and so I gave her permission. And the way that she did it was as a kind of guided meditation, moving through, finding a path and moving towards a literal or an imaginative library. And so I would go into the library, and she'd say, "Well, now what do you see?" And I would tell her what I was seeing, and she would point me to a place like there's lots of books, and um, you're going into the stacks and you find a book that catches your attention, and so just pull it off the shelf. And so I pulled it off the shelf in my imagination, and I opened it, and it was in Old French. And somehow I knew that this was a book about my father's family. And I thought, oh God, well, first of all, I don't read Old French. And I thought, no, I don't think I want to read about my father's family today. Okay, so I put that aside, and then I found another book lying open on a table. And so, in a sense, I entered the book, the atmosphere of the book. Uh, and as my friend was guiding me, I found myself in the world of King Arthur and the Druids. So I could feel the tension between those two groups. It was actually like stepping into the Mists of Avalon, which I know we've
Mm,
both read,
yeah.
uh, about King Arthur's court and his sister Morgane, and the Druidic people and Merlin on Avalon. So somehow I was in that situation between those two worlds, trying to find a way to help them mediate, or come together or understand one another, stay in relationship, because they were they were being pulled apart. So there was a lot of conflict in the atmosphere. And it seemed that I was talking to someone in that time and place and trying to help him figure this out. And so I was suggesting, well, I don't know, maybe you could talk to Merlin or one of the Druidic priests, or maybe there's a Roman priest who's not so stuck or stiff or something. Maybe you could, So there was a kind of conversation going on there. And then the session was coming to a close, and I was coming kind of back to this time. And I stopped at one point, and I turned and I ran back, and I said, oh, and I'll be helping from the 21st century. And then I turned and came back, and we ended the meditation. And I sat there and I thought, whoa, what was that? But it was so sort of subtle and kind of matter of fact. It was a little like entering a dream time. And kind of walking around. And so it wasn't scary or it didn't feel weird to be inside, but it was kind of coming back and thinking, that was a place, that was a state of mind that I visited, that was very different from the state of mind I had begun.
So how would you compare those two states? I'm curious,
Well,
kind of on an emotional kind of mood type way.
The
You said dream.
dreams, it is like a dream. And it's always interesting because the emotional content in a dream is often quite different from when we wake up from the dream. This didn't seem to have, there was no fear. There was a sense of calm and also curiosity. And also there was this conflict, but I knew I wasn't in it. But there was also a sense that, I have to try to figure out or help people try to mediate this, try to bring these two worlds back together. And kind of a distress. So there's a kind of because I wasn't sure how to do that. It felt, now I remember, it felt almost like it was too much and it wasn't going to work. And there was a sense of worry that I couldn't be of any help at all. And that's why I think as I was leaving the scene, all of a sudden I thought, well, wait a minute, maybe I'll figure out, maybe there are resources in the 21st century that I can kind of bring to bear on this. So that's why I ran back in an excited way and said, oh, wait, don't despair. I'll get back to you on this, right?
Thank you. So there's this dreamlike ancient quality to it, I heard.
Mm-hmm.
And you weren't afraid, but you were invested in supporting.
Mm-hmm.
So there was tension and conflict, but you weren't in danger. So that's going to be interesting.
And worry that I wasn't going to be able to, it's like, oh, why? It felt too big. It's like, I'm not going to be able to come up with something that's going to actually make a difference.
Yeah. And then you came back and you were excited to come back because you had solutions.
Well, no, I thought, I knew that there was a possibility that once I was back in the 21st century, I don't know, I'd Google something. I'd find, like, I found this thing online. Here's the address. Oh, you don't have computers. Okay, well, something like that.
Okay.
So I think the end of the feeling inside the dream was excitement about the possibility. So a lightening up. It's like, it's like I was in and among magical people who were losing their magic. I knew at the end of the Akashic record dreaming session that I actually had magic to offer. That's what it felt like. Even though I didn't know what that magic was, that's why I had to get back to them later.
Yeah. Lovely. Well, we'll see what I create with that. Lots of fun stuff in there.
As I was telling this story, Craig, did you get any images of the place I was in? Because I didn't really describe that, but even could you sort of...
Well, when you talked about the mists of time and stuff, I was kind of getting some kind of vague ideas. Nothing really crystal clear, but you know, um,
This might help. The scene to enter, I was going down a path, and it was outside, and it was not in a dense forest, but a sort of a wide path. But there were trees around, and so this meeting with this person from that time, who may or may not have been me, was it wasn't in a room. It wasn't inside. It was outside, which also made me feel or sense that it needed to be private, and it needed to be not overheard, and it needed to be, it's like we were planning something or trying to strategize something that we didn't want the both sides that were in conflict to know about.
okay. So the sides in conflict were not there.
No.
Okay. All right. That's good to know.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I have some notion of what's going to happen, and I don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah, that's the best. You don't know what's going to happen. Stay tuned. Right.
So I'm going to switch to the piano, and you can enjoy the scene of my hands playing the ivories if you like, or you can close your eyes and enjoy whatever works for you.
Mm.
And let's see what we get.
Okay.
I can't hear you yet. I'm just putting my earbuds back in.
I haven't said anything.
All right.
Whoa. Your mic is up? Good.
Yep, I remembered.
Yes, well done. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
There was a way that the music invited me back into the scene in some way, in a different way. So some of it seemed like, oh, I'm kind of remembering what it was, as though now I'm hearing the musical accompaniment, and or it anyway. I guess the most remarkable thing about it is it felt like there was another layer of information that I got about this and the session with the music, and that was what came to me was allies are everywhere. And then I remembered or sensed or could tap into the presence of unseen beings when I was with that figure from another time talking. So that we had this, oh, how are we going to fix this? Oh, do you know, without or kind of forgetting the I don't know, the little people or the sprites or the tree spirits or the stone people or, you know, all of those beings. So there was something about this music that brought those beings into awareness.
I like
That was
it.
pretty cool. I know.
Yeah. Anything else?
Not that I can think of right offhand.
Yeah. Well, thanks. That was fun for me. Uh, I don't know why I immediately started imagining these open fifths, um, for whatever reason. So they played a big part in that. Um, so what is there anything that you're up to in your life these days? That stuff that's coming up that you want to let people know about that we haven't
Well,
talked
the
about?
books that we've talked about, these two books are coming
Yeah,
out.
yeah.
A lot of my time and attention is there. I'm hoping to get both of them out next month. Well, we'll see, but things are moving in such a way that it looks like that will be possible. And the best way for Canadians to get these books will be on Amazon, just because. And then Americans can order them through their local bookstore, and if they choose, but to do that in Canada would double the price,
Yeah, yeah,
because of how they're printed, where they're manufactured, and
right.
the exchange and all that. So there are those. I'm also offering Akashic reading consultations.
Uh-huh. Yes. I've been the recipient of one of those when you were first learning. That was a
Yeah,
very interesting experience.
yeah. It's kind of hard to describe.
Yes.
That's why I kind of wanted to like, what would it be like to hear musical accompaniment to it too? So there's this. It's like you enter an energy field, which is exactly what we're doing when we're in the presence of music.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and it's an interpenetrating fields of sound, music, and our energy fields. So, and there's something quite, I don't know, fruitful in that exchange. So there's that. I'm also still doing astrological consults.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
What I find with the Akashic Records is it's in a sense a simpler, in some ways, a simpler way to get at the same in kind of information, which is sort of the blueprint of the soul. But with astrology, there's so many different moving parts and mythological stories and houses and aspects, and so so it's a complex vocabulary that can be overwhelming to people. It's still manageable because but it depends. And for some, it's just not a good metaphorical language. So the Akashic Records is a way of, in a sense, bypassing some of that and then coming up with a different kind of metaphor that is coming from a different place.
Yeah. Wonderful. Anything else?
Well, yeah, I'm still doing energy work too, energy balancing and clearing.
Yes. And you mentioned meditative writing. Say a little bit about that.
Right. Right. I've actually been talking to a couple of metaphysical bookstores in the area who are interested in offering a one evening, 2 hour and a half or so session of something I call meditative writing, a listening process.
Mm.
So it's basically meditating, following your thought with a pen in your hand, and then seeing what that reveals. What that thought is speaking to us about. So it's a way of listening to our thought, but also our emotion, body. It widens out into larger spheres. And I, over the 30 years or so I've been doing that practice, it really helps. It's helped me to cultivate my intuition.
Mm. Wonderful.
Yeah.
And you also wrote, what does drawing/dialogue refer to? I mean, those two things on their
Oh,
own make sense to me, but is there a relationship?
put them together. Talking pictures. Oh, we had the silent films, and now we had talkies. No, it's not that. It's that came out of the journal work that I was doing with people, where basically you'd start with a drawing. We kind of did this when you
Yes,
were on
I
Facebook,
this
images
yeah.
and making music off of that. So this is where you just doodle, you make marks. You're not, and then you stop, and then you look at the page, the drawing, let's say, and then you do a timed write describing what you see in the drawing. And then you may what it felt like to create it, or what you're seeing, or it may be interpretation, or oh, it looks like a cat, or oh, there's sharp edges. And then so it's a
I think
way of
I think you've done that with me in the distant past. I remember being at your place drawing something.
yep.
Yeah.
And then there's a way to move into a dialogue. So the drawing, you might ask a question, and so you might say, well, I might ask this question, well, what are you about? And the drawing might say something like, I'm about movement. What kind of movement? Oh, well, look at me. How am I moving? Oh, you're jagged. What are you trying to, what's it like to be jagged? Well, jagged, like, so it's just a kind of an associative, intuitive process where you imagine a dialogue with the drawing.
Wow.
Or with anything else. Basically, you could do that with. There's something about making a drawing. I used to do it with like a gremlin. Like, okay, we all have a gremlin or a saboteur or something. Draw it. Okay, draw, because we all know what it looks like somehow. and then describe what it eats, where it lives, what its habits are, all of these things. Now, what do you want to say to this being? And what do you want to hear? It's not, and what does this figure want to say to you? Do it in dream work as well.
Yeah.
That's what I mean by dialogue. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you. And the last thing I see on there, constellating inner figures or aspects of selves.
Oh, that's so fun. Oh my gosh. So I know it sounds really hard and complicated. It's pretty easy. In fact, this is often the way I begin an astrological reading. Is I have the client sit down and say, okay, you're facing a question or an area of your life that you have probably more than one opinion about. Like, a part of me wants to go to the gym, and a part of me doesn't want to go to the gym, and another part of me wants to around my health, maybe. Okay, so we make a list of all these different parts, and then we imagine putting them in a circle. The gym person, and then the not gym person, and the this person, and the that person, and the one, and then look at how they are related to each other. Are they in conflict? Are they in harmony? Are they far apart? Are parts get league with each other? And then we sort of draw the connection, we imagine, whether it's strong or light or conflicted or harmonious. Then we look at the astrological chart with its angles and aspects and oppositions and trines, just first of all to look at how the figures are clumped. So the planets, there may be a lot going on over here, and there may be a lot going on over there. And so it's a way to work into almost like a concrete image of this is me. It's planets in the sky, but it's also the part of me that initiates action, Mars, or that's the part of me that values and enters relationship, Venus, or it's this part of me. And how are they relating to each other in your own psyche? And then how do you want them to be relating? So then there's another constellation you can draw about how you want to be relating to these inner parts of yourself, and then action based on the new constellation. So, I mean, there's a longer process, but
yeah,
it's very fun.
Yeah. Lots
and
of
easier
fascinating.
actually. Yeah.
Lots of fascinating stuff.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Alfred, for joining me.
You're welcome.
I had a good time.
Me too.
Yeah. And I'll let you know when I'm going live with this episode. It'll be a little while because I've got some others already in the can ready to go. But
Good.
Yeah.
And as you know, I keep thinking of people who might be interested in coming on and telling stories. So
yeah. Beautiful.
Good.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for tuning in to Stories from Under the Piano. If today's episode resonated with you, consider booking your own personal Under the Piano session. It's available both in person and online. Experience the transformative power of music tailored just for you, featuring several personalized compositions that capture the essence of your stories. Learn more and book your session at craigaddy.com. Let's create something beautiful together.